I've been going to Russia since 1986, when it was still a communist Soviet Union. So I've had a long-standing fascination with the country. On this particular occasion, we were making a film in a Russian prison, and on our way back, the story of the acid attack on Sergei Filin broke. And both myself and my producer, Mark Franchetti, based in Moscow, felt immediately that this was potentially a very strong story. So we hightailed it down to the Bolshoi and asked if we could come inside. Remarkably, they said yes for a day. And then a few weeks later, about 3 weeks later, they arrested Pavel Dmtrichenko, the male ballerina. And I think at that place the whole institution went into shock and took us another 8 months to get back inside. But the first time I stepped inside the Bolshoi, I had no idea just how vast it was. I mean, even after 6 months there, I was still getting lost in some of the corridors. There's 3,000 people that worked there. So the whole thing was quite daunting to begin with, especially since the access we'd negotiated was sort of unfettered and uncensored. So we could speak to anybody and pretty much go anywhere. There were no restrictions on what we could do. Bolshoi is older than the United States. So this is a world-renowned global brand and institution. Everybody, or nearly everybody, recognizes, what it is, but they don't really know, how it works, or, So I was very attracted as a filmmaker to go inside this rather mystical, symbolic icon of Russian culture, and to sort of deconstruct it, if you like, not in a cynical way, but just to understand how it worked and understand the layers of relationships and dynamics that went on inside. So I guess it was a sort of combination of the epic and the intimate that I was aiming for. And, obviously the performances and the sets and the stage are in and of themselves epic, and the theatre itself. But then I wanted to take a very intimate approach in trying to draw out the personalities and fears and phobias of the dancers. The Bolshoi holds a unique place in the Russian heart and culture. I mean, for every young girl, when they're about 7 or 8, goes to the Bolshoi. It's a rite of passage. And there are generations of Russians who regard the Bolshoi as something very, very special in their culture. And still to this day, the veterans of the Second World War gather outside the Bolshoi and sing songs. It was very important during the Second World War, for instance. It's where families who'd been split by war would be reunited. So it's much more than a theatre. They're immensely proud of it. As a weapon of soft power, which is the quote that Medvedev gives us in the film, Russia's prime minister, what I think he's referring to is that historically it's been used to sort of be a currency in soft diplomacy. So there are various historic examples during the Cold War, but when they were trying to negotiate various sort of policies of détente, Russian ballerinas were sent to dance in the White House to sort of try and warm up the diplomatic negotiations that followed. And the same was true through Glasnost and Perestroika years, when ballerinas went in advance of Gorbachev, when he was negotiating the whole sort of breakup of the Soviet Union. And it was also a place where Stalin and many other Soviet leaders would hold, official functions as well. In fact, many people would say that the whole concept of the Cold War was launched from the stage of the Bolshoi by Stalin in 1948, I believe. Putin's is unusual relative to his predecessors in that he's got very, very little interest in the theatre or in ballet or opera. And after, when the Bolshoi reopened after, I think it was a 7-year reconstruction, it was a gala opening, as you can imagine, and Putin decided to go and play ice hockey, to give you an understanding of where the Bolshoi sits in his priorities. Well, one of the ballet masters in the film says, that the Bolshoi is like an ocean liner, that it's impervious, so it's bulletproof, if you like. It just keeps on going. It's impervious to political ideologies and regimes and leaderships. It will always be there. But under Putin, it's still funded by the state and funded very generously. It's not. It doesn't have quite the same status as it did under previous regimes. And the ballerinas arrive at the Bolshoi thinking, that they're handpicked and they're the best of the best and the top of their class. And then they go into the corps de ballet, and many of the dancers referred to the corps de ballet as the graveyard of talent, because they having been led to believe that they were the best of the best, they then sort of fester there, and it's very difficult for them to break out of the corps de ballet unless they somehow bring that they can attract the attention of the casting directors and the artistic director. Well, how do they attract that person's attention if it's not just on merit? Well, that's where the allegations of sexual favours and corruption come in. Certainly, as in any dance company, it's highly competitive, and as I said, these girls and boys have a very limited career span, so they sometimes have to resort to other tactics to attract people's attention. Well, I think what many dancers mentioned to us is that the stage of the Bolshoi is a quite a magical or almost sacred place. Many of them talked about it in almost religious terminology, that that it's sort of kind of altered, and that the audience are come to worship. I think it is a magical place, and I felt very privileged to have witnessed some 20-25 performances from backstage, which was a remarkably privileged perspective on this extraordinary place.